Chapter 1. The Stranger at My Door. The autumn wind howled across the Colorado plains like a wounded animal, carrying with it the scent of approaching winter and something else, something that made the hairs on the back of my neck stand on end. I'd been living alone in my cabin outside of Deadwood for 3 years now, ever since I'd left my badge behind in Kansas City. The solitude suited me fine, or so I told myself as I sat by the fire, cleaning my Winchester for what felt like the 100th time that week. It was past midnight when I heard it, a sound so faint I almost missed it over the whistling wind. A soft thud against my front door, followed by what sounded like scratching. At first I figured it was just tumbleweeds, or maybe a lost animal seeking shelter. But then I heard it again, more deliberate this time, like someone trying to knock, but lacking the strength to make a proper sound. I set down my rifle and moved toward the door, my bare feet silent on the rough wooden planks. Years of being a lawman had taught me to approach every unexpected visitor with caution out here. Miles from the nearest settlement, midnight callers usually meant trouble. "Who's there?" I called out, my hand instinctively moving to the Colt revolver at my hip. Silence. Then, so faint I had to strain to hear it. "Please, ... help ... The voice was barely a whisper, weak and trembling. It was a woman's voice, and she sounded like she was in serious trouble. Every instinct I'd developed during my years as a sheriff told me to be careful, but something deeper, something human, compelled me to act. I unlatched the door and pulled it open cautiously. What I saw made my blood run cold. A young woman, probably no more than 25, lay crumpled on my doorstep like a broken doll. Her long auburn hair was matted with dirt and what looked like dried blood. Her dress, once probably a fine blue, cotton, was torn in several places and stained with mud and worse. But it was her face that hit me like a punch to the gut. Dark purple bruises covered her left cheek and jaw. Her bottom lip was split and swollen. One eye was nearly swollen shut, the skin around it a sickly yellow-green that told me these injuries were a few days old. Fresh scratches crisscrossed her arms, and I could see finger-shaped bruises around her throat. "Jesus Christ," I muttered, dropping to one knee beside her. Ma'am, can you hear me?" Her good eye fluttered open, focusing on me with difficulty. When she spoke, her voice was so hoarse I had to lean close to make out the words. They're coming," she whispered, her fingers grasping weakly at my shirt. "He said, ... He said he'd kill me this time. Said he'd kill anyone who helped me. Who's coming? Who did this to you?" She tried to sit up, but immediately winced in pain, her hand going to her ribs. I could see the fear in her eyes, pure animal terror that no person should ever have to experience. "Please," she gasped, "don't let them find me." Her words trailed off as her eye rolled back and she went limp in my arms. I checked her pulse, weak but steady. She was alive, but barely. Whatever had happened to her, whoever had done this, she'd pushed herself to the limit just to reach my door. I scooped her up as gently as I could, surprised by how light she felt. She couldn't weigh more than 100 pounds soaking wet, and right now she felt as fragile as bird bones. I carried her inside and laid her on my bed, then quickly stoked the fire to warm the cabin. As I examined her injuries by lamplight, my anger grew. I'd seen plenty of violence in my time as a lawman, but there was something particularly sickening about seeing a woman beaten this badly. The bruises were systematic, deliberate. This wasn't the result of a single outburst of rage. This was sustained, methodical abuse. I cleaned her wounds as best I could with warm water and the few medical supplies I kept on hand. She stirred a few times, mumbling incoherently about someone named Marcus and pleading for someone to help her little sister. That detail caught my attention. If she had family, they might be in danger too. Around 3 in the morning, she began to stir more frequently, occasionally crying out in her sleep. Once, she sat bolt upright, her eyes wide with terror. "No, please," she gasped. "I won't run." "Again, I promise." I moved to her side, speaking softly. "You're safe now, ma'am. No one's going to hurt you here." She looked at me with confusion, as if trying to remember where she was. Slowly, recognition dawned in her eyes. You helped me," she said, her voice still hoarse but stronger than before. "Yes, ma'am. You collapsed at my door. I'm Jack Morrison. This is my cabin." She tried to sit up, then thought better of it as pain flashed across her face. I'm Sarah Whitmore, Mr. Morrison," she said. "I need to tell you something important. But first I need to know, are you a good man? Because if you're not, if you're like the others, then I've made a terrible mistake coming here." I sat back in my chair, considering the question. After what I'd done in Kansas City, after the badge I'd thrown down in disgust, I wasn't sure I qualified as a good man anymore. But looking at this broken woman in my bed, I knew one thing for certain. "I don't know if I'm good, Miss Whitmore," I said honestly, "but I know I'd never hurt a woman. And I know I won't let anyone else hurt you while you're under my roof." She studied my face for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "There's something you need to know about why I'm here, about why they're after me. It's not just because I ran away from my husband." My jaw tightened. I'd suspected domestic abuse, but hearing it confirmed made my blood boil. "Your husband did this to you, Marcus Whitmore, but that's not the worst of it." She took a shaky breath. "He's not just a cruel husband, Mr. Morrison. He's part of something bigger, something that could destroy this entire territory if someone doesn't stop it." Before I could ask what she meant, we both heard it, the distant sound of horses approaching, fast. Sarah's face went white as fresh snow. "They found me," she whispered, terror creeping back into her voice. "Oh God, they found me." I moved to the window and peered through the shutters. In the moonlight, I could make out at least 4 riders approaching at a gallop. They were still a quarter mile away, but they were definitely heading straight for my cabin. "Sarah," I said, turning back to her, "I need you to tell me everything, and I need you to tell me now. Who are these men, and what did you discover that has them willing to chase you across the territory?" She gripped my arm with surprising strength. "They're not just after me because I left Marcus. They're after me because I found out about the gold." Chapter 2. Secrets in the Shadows. What gold? I demanded, but the sound of approaching hoofbeats was getting closer. I could hear voices now, rough and angry, carrying on the night wind. "There's no time," Sarah gasped, trying to sit up despite her injuries. "They can't find me here. If they do, they'll kill us both." I helped her to her feet, noting how she favored her left side, probably had a cracked rib or two. "Can you walk?" she nodded, though I could see the effort it cost her. "I have too." The voices outside were clearer now. I counted at least 4 distinct male voices, all of them sounding like the kind of men I'd spent years putting behind bars. Hard men with nothing to lose. I grabbed my rifle and gun belt, then led Sarah toward the back of the cabin. I had a route. Cellar dug into the hillside behind the house. It wasn't much, but it might buy us some time. Listen to me carefully, I whispered as we made our way through the darkness. I'm going to hide you in my cellar. Whatever happens, whatever you hear, don't come out until I come for you personally. Understand? She nodded, her hand clutching mine with desperate strength. Jack, there's something else. My sister Emma, she's still with Marcus. She's only 16, and if they find out I told anyone about the gold, we'll get to your sister. I promised, though I had no idea how. But first we need to keep you alive. The cellar door was hidden beneath a pile of old lumber and tarps. I quickly moved them aside and helped Sarah down into the small underground space. It wasn't comfortable, just bare earth walls and a few shelves where I stored preserves and winter supplies. But it was dark and quiet. Stay here, I said again. No matter what you hear. I closed the cellar door and hastily rearranged the lumber to hide it, then made my way back toward the front of the cabin. Through the window, I could see 4 men on horseback surrounding my property. They were silhouetted against the moonlight, but I could make out enough details to know they meant business. All 4 were armed with rifles, and they moved with the practiced coordination of men who'd done this kind of work before. The leader, a tall, broad-shouldered man with a prominent mustache, dismounted and approached my front door. The others remained mounted, creating a perimeter around the cabin. Professional. These weren't just angry cowboys or drunk miners. These men knew what they were doing. "Hello, the house," the leader called out. "We know you're in there, Mr. We're looking for a woman. Young, auburn hair, probably hurt bad. She might have come begging for help." I took a deep breath and opened the door, keeping my rifle visible but not directly threatening. Years of experience told me that showing weakness would get me killed, but so would appearing too aggressive. "Gentlemen," I said calmly, "it's Mighty. Late for social calls?" The leader stepped closer, and I got a better look at him. He was in his 40s, with cold grey eyes and the kind of face that suggested he'd done things that would keep decent men awake at night. His clothes were well made but travel-worn, and there was a badge pinned to his vest that caught the moonlight. "Deputy Marshal Tom Brennan," he said, showing me the badge. "We're tracking a dangerous fugitive, woman by the name of Sarah Whitmore. She's wanted for theft and assault back in Denver." I kept my expression neutral, though inside I was processing this new information quickly. If these men were really law enforcement, then Sarah might not be the innocent victim I'd assumed. But something about their approach, the way they'd surrounded my cabin, the late hour, the obvious violence in their manner, didn't sit right with me. "Haven't seen any women out here, Marshal," I lied smoothly. "This is pretty isolated country. If someone was hurt bad, they probably wouldn't make it this far on foot." Brennan studied my face carefully. "Mind if we take a look around, just to be sure?" The 4 men searched my cabin thoroughly and professionally. They checked under the bed, behind the furniture, even up in the loft where I stored my winter gear. They found nothing, of course, but I could see Brennan wasn't entirely satisfied. "Mr. Morrison," Brennan said finally, "I'm going to be straight with you. This woman we're looking for, she's dangerous. She killed a man back in Denver, took something. That doesn't belong to her. If she shows up here, if she spins you some sob story about being hurt or needing help, don't believe her. She's a liar and a thief, and she'll get you killed just as sure as she killed her last victim." They mounted up and rode off into the darkness, but I noticed that one of them lingered at the edge of my property for several minutes, watching the cabin. Only when I was sure they were truly gone did I make my way back to the cellar. Sarah was huddled in the corner when I opened the door, her arms wrapped round her knees. She looked up at me with haunted eyes. "They're gone," I said, helping her out of the cellar. For now, we made our way back inside, and I bolted the door behind us. Sarah collapsed into the chair by the fire, exhaustion evident in every line of her body. They said, "You killed someone in Denver," I said without preamble. "They said you're a thief and a murderer." She looked up at me with a mixture of pain and resignation. "And you believe them?" I studied her face, the bruises, the split lip, the terror that still haunted her eyes. "I believe someone gave you those bruises. I believe someone hurt you bad enough that you'd rather risk dying in the wilderness than stay where you were. As for the rest, ... I shrugged. "I reckon there's more to the story." Tears started flowing down her cheeks then, and she covered her face with her hands. "I did kill someone," she whispered. "But it wasn't murder. It was self-defense." I sat down, across from her, and waited. Sometimes the best way to get the truth was just to let someone tell it in their own time. "Marcus ... my husband. He wasn't always violent," she began, her voice barely above a whisper. "When we first married 2 years ago, he was charming, successful. He owned several businesses in Denver, a hotel, a saloon, some mining interests. I thought I was the luckiest woman alive." She paused, touching the bruises on her face unconsciously. "The beatings started about 6 months after the wedding. Little things at first, a slap when dinner was late, a shove when I asked too many, questions about his business. But it got worse, much worse. 3 weeks ago, I discovered something I wasn't supposed to see. Marcus had papers in his safe, maps, letters, financial documents. He was planning something big, something that involved the territorial government, and a lot of very powerful men." "The gold you mentioned," I said. She nodded. "There's a massive gold deposit about 30 miles north of here, on land that's supposed to be protected Lakota territory. But Marcus and his partners have been secretly mining it for months, using forged government documents and bribing local officials. They're stealing millions of dollars worth of gold that rightfully belongs to the tribe." The implications of what she was telling me were staggering. If it was true, it could mean war between the government and the tribes, thousands of deaths, and the destruction of everything the peace treaties had tried to accomplish. "Because I copied the documents," she said. "I knew if I ever tried to leave Marcus, I'd need something to protect myself. So I made copies of everything: the mining permits, the bribery records, the correspondence with government officials. I hid them in a safe place. And 3 weeks ago," her face darkened, "Marcus caught me going through his papers. He had lost control completely. Beat me worse than he ever had before. Said he was going to kill me, make it look like an accident. But first, he wanted to know what I'd seen, what I knew." She pulled aside the collar of her dress, revealing more bruises around her throat, the distinct pattern of fingers trying to choke the life out of her. "That's when you killed someone." She nodded, fresh tears starting to flow. "Marcus came at me again. But this time, I was ready. I had a kitchen knife hidden under my apron. When he grabbed me, when he started choking me again, I stabbed him." The words came out in a rush now, as if she'd been holding them back for weeks. "He didn't die right away. He was screaming, calling for help. I knew his men would come, knew they'd kill me for what I'd done. So I grabbed what money I could find and ran." I sat back in my chair, trying to process everything she'd told me. If she was telling the truth, and every instinct I had said she was, then we were dealing with something much bigger than a simple domestic dispute. "Sarah," I said finally, "where did you hide those copied documents?" She was quiet for a long moment, then looked up at me with something that might have been hope. "Do you believe me? Do you believe I'm telling the truth?" I thought about the systematic nature of her injuries, the way those so-called marshals had approached my cabin, the fear in her eyes when she talked about her sister. "Yeah," I said. "I believe you." She closed her eyes in relief. "The documents are hidden in Denver, in a place Marcus would never think to look. But getting them, that would mean going back there. And if we're caught, then we better not get caught," I said. Chapter 3: The Road to Danger. The next morning dawned cold and grey, with heavy clouds promising snow before nightfall. I'd spent most of the night planning, and by the time Sarah woke up, I had the basics of what we needed to do worked out in my mind. "How are you feeling?" I asked as she stirred on the bed. She sat up slowly, wincing as her injuries reminded her of their presence. "Better, stronger." She looked at me with determination I hadn't seen the night before. "You meant what you said about helping me." "I meant it, but we need to be smart about this. Those men last night, whether they're real marshals or not, they'll be watching for you." I handed her a cup of coffee and sat down across from her. "Tell me about these documents you hid. Where exactly are they? And how do we get to them without walking into a trap?" Sarah took a sip of the coffee and seemed to gather her thoughts. "Before I married Marcus, I worked as a seamstress for Mrs. Helena Morrison, no relation to you, I assume, who ran a dress shop on Larimer Street in Denver. Helena was like a mother to me. When things started getting bad with Marcus, I would visit her sometimes, pretend I was just ordering new dresses." She paused, touching the bruises on her face. "The last time I saw her, I gave her a package to keep safe. Told her it was fabric samples I was saving for a special project. She put it in her safe without asking questions." "So the evidence is in a dress shop safe in the middle of Denver," I said. "That's not going to be easy to get to without being seen." "There's more," Sarah continued. "Helena's shop is right across the street from the Silver Dollar Hotel, one of Marcus's businesses. His men are probably watching it, waiting for me to show up. Denver was a 3-day ride from here, and every mile would be dangerous. But if we could get those documents, we might have enough evidence to bring down not just Marcus, but his entire operation." "What about your sister?" I asked. "If we're going to Denver anyway, we should try to get her to safety. Emma's smart, and she's brave. If I could get word to her, tell her to meet us somewhere, ... We send her a message, something innocent, something that wouldn't raise suspicions if Marcus's people intercepted it, but something that she'd understand meant she should leave Colorado Springs and meet us somewhere safe." Sarah's eyes lit up. "Yes, when we were little, we used to leave notes for each other using our grandmother's old recipe codes. Emma would remember." I pulled out a map of Colorado Territory and spread it on the table. "Here," I said, pointing to a small town called Fairplay. "It's right on the main road between Colorado Springs and Denver, but it's small enough that we can watch for trouble." Over the next hour, we worked out the details. I would ride to Deadwood to send the telegram, while Sarah stayed hidden at the cabin. The ride to Deadwood took me through some of the most beautiful country in the territory, but I barely noticed the scenery. My mind was focused on the dangers ahead. The telegram was exactly as we'd planned, innocent on the surface, but containing the coded message Emma would understand. As I handed it to the clerk, I noticed a familiar face across the street. One of the men from last night's visit to my cabin was sitting on the porch of the saloon. Apparently watching the telegraph office, I spent the next hour moving around town, making it look like I was running normal errands. Finally, I came up with a plan. There was a back trail out of town that led through some rough country. It would add an hour to my journey, but it would also give me a chance to lose any pursuit. The next 30 minutes were a game of cat and mouse through some of the roughest terrain in the territory. But I knew this country better than he did, and eventually I managed to lose him in a maze of canyons and ridges. By the time I made it back to the cabin, it was past 2 in the afternoon. Sarah met me at the door, relief evident on her face. Scented. But we've got a problem. I told her about the man watching the telegraph office and the chase through the back country. They're definitely keeping tabs on the town. That evening, as we prepared for the journey ahead, Sarah told me more about the gold mine operation. It's not just about the money, she explained. Marcus and his partners are planning to use the stolen gold to finance a private army. They want to take control of the entire territory. How many men does Marcus have working for him? I asked. At least 20 that I knew about, probably more now. Ex-soldiers mostly, the kind of men who don't ask questions as long as the pay is good. Sarah, I said, I want you to understand something. What we're planning to do, it's dangerous, more dangerous than you might realize. She looked at me steadily. Jack, 3 weeks ago, I was a scared woman who let her husband beat her because I was too afraid to fight back. But when I found out what Marcus was really doing, when I realized that his greed could start a war that would kill thousands of innocent people, I decided that some things are worth dying for. Snow had started falling, big, wet flakes that would make traveling more difficult, but would also help cover our tracks. We'll leave at first light, I said. It's a hard 3 days to Fairplay, maybe 4 in this weather. Chapter 4. The Final Confrontation. The journey to Fairplay took us for grueling days through unforgiving country. We traveled mostly at night, sleeping in hidden camps during the day, always watching for signs of pursuit. Sarah proved to be tougher than her injuries suggested. On the 3rd day, we had our first real encounter with help. We were crossing a high mountain pass when we came across 3 Lakota warriors, one of them badly wounded. They'd been shot trying to stop the illegal mining operation on their sacred land. After Sarah tended to the wounded man's injuries, we learned they'd been fighting Marcus's men for weeks. The warriors agreed to help us if we could expose the mining operation and get justice for their people. We made it to Fairplay without further incident, and I sent a message to Marcus at his Denver hotel. Have your wife. She wants to trade evidence for her sister. Fairplay Hotel, sunset tomorrow. Come alone or the deal is off. The next evening arrived with a brilliant sunset. I was positioned at the window when I saw them coming. Marcus Whitmore and 6 of his men riding down the main street like they owned the town. Marcus looked exactly as Sarah had described him, big, powerful, with cold grey eyes. Even from a distance, I could see the bandages around his midsection where Sarah's knife had found its mark. I met him in the lobby, my hand resting on my gun butt. Up close, he was even more imposing. Mr. Morrison, he said in a voice like gravel, you're either very brave or very stupid. Little of both, probably. You bring the girl, she's safe. For now. He reached into his coat and pulled out a folded piece of paper. Letter from your sister-in-law. Written yesterday. I read it quickly. It was definitely written in a young woman's hand, containing details only Emma would know. But I could read the terror between the lines. Here's how we do this, I said. Tomorrow morning, you bring the girl to the old mine shaft about 2 miles north of town. You come alone. No guns, no tricks. I'll have Sarah there with the evidence. Marcus's smile grew wider and uglier. You really think I'm going to let you walk away after what you've cost me? I think you want those documents more than you want revenge. The next morning dawned clear and cold. Sarah and I rode out to the old mine shaft just as the sun was clearing. The eastern mountains. The place was perfect. A flat clearing surrounded by rocks and trees where the Lakota warriors could take position. Marcus arrived exactly on time, and to my surprise, he really was alone. He rode into the clearing leading a second horse with a small figure tied to the saddle. Emma Whitmore was everything Sarah had said, 16 years old, with auburn hair and a face pale with terror. She was bound and gagged, but clearly alive and unharmed. There she is, Marcus called out. Now where's my wife? Sarah stepped out from behind the rocks. Even at that distance, I could see Marcus's face change, a mixture of rage and something that might have been relief. Hello, Marcus, she called out, her voice steady. Let Emma go, Sarah said. She doesn't have anything to do with this. Marcus laughed, and the sound made my skin crawl. You see, Sarah, I've learned a lot about leverage since you ran off. Sarah held up a leather satchel. Everything's in here. Maps, letters, financial records. Enough to put you and your partners in prison for the rest of your lives. Show me, Marcus demanded. Let Emma go first. I don't think so. Marcus drew his gun, keeping it pointed at Emma. You're going to walk over here, very slowly, and hand me that satchel. Then you're going to get on your knees and beg my forgiveness. That's when I stepped out from my hiding place, my rifle trained on Marcus's chest. I've got a better idea. How about you let both women go, and I don't put a bullet through your heart? Marcus swung his gun toward me. Morrison, I should have known you wouldn't have the stones to face me honestly. Marcus fired at me, the bullet whining past my ear. I dove to the side, bringing my rifle up, but he was already spurring his horse toward the trees, dragging Emma's mount behind him. Then the Lakota warriors appeared, seeming to materialize from the rocks themselves. Running Bear and two others blocked Marcus's escape route, while Grey Wolf moved to flank him. Suddenly, Marcus found himself surrounded. He pulled his horse to a stop and looked around wildly, his gun now pressed against Emma's head. Back off, all of you. I'll kill her. No, I said, walking slowly toward him. You won't. Because you know that the moment you hurt that girl, you're a dead man. And deep down, Marcus, you're a coward. Sarah, he called out suddenly, you want to save your sister? Then bring me those documents. Bring them here now, or I'll blow her brains out. Sarah looked at me, and I could see the terrible choice she was facing. Do it, Emma said suddenly, her voice muffled but still audible. Sarah, just give him what he wants. But Sarah was looking at me, and I could see her making a decision that took tremendous courage. No, she said clearly, I won't do it. Because if I give you those documents, Marcus, then everything you've done, everything you're planning to do, it all continues. More people die. And Emma would never forgive me for that. Marcus's face went purple with rage. You stupid bitch. I'll kill her. No, I said quietly. You won't. The shot came from behind Marcus's Grey Wolf's rifle, fired from the rocks. The bullet took Marcus high in the shoulder, spinning him around and causing him to drop his gun. Emma's horse shied, but Running Bear was already there, grabbing the reins and pulling the girl to safety. Marcus tumbled from his saddle, clutching his wounded shoulder and screaming curses. "It's over, Marcus," I said. He looked up at me with eyes full of hate. "You think this changes anything? There are men in Denver, men in Washington, who have too much invested in this operation to let it die." "Maybe," I said, "but that's a problem for another day." Sarah was already untying her sister, both women crying as they embraced. "What do we do with him?" Grey Wolf asked. "We take him to Denver," I said finally. "Along with the evidence Sarah has. We find someone in authority who can't be bought. And we make sure this whole operation gets exposed." As we prepared to leave the clearing, Emma spoke up for the first time since her rescue. "Sarah, who are these people? What's really going on here?" Sarah looked at her sister, so young, so innocent. "It's a long story, Em. But the important thing is that it's over now. Marcus can't hurt us anymore." But even as she said it, I could see in her eyes that she knew this was far from over. We'd won a battle, but the war was just beginning. Still, as we rode away from that clearing with Emma safe and Marcus our prisoner, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years: hope. We'd stopped this piece of it. We'd saved these two women, protected the Lakota's sacred land, and proven that sometimes, when good people stood together, they could stand against the darkness and win. If this story moved you or kept you on the edge of your seat, let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that like button for more incredible tales from America's frontier. What would you have done in Jack's position? Share your thoughts. I read every single comment.